I arrived at the restaurant an hour early. Mixing up the time was a stupid mistake, but that mistake saved my life. When I pushed open the door to the private room my daughter had reserved, I heard voices. I immediately recognized Jennifer's laugh, the same one I'd heard since she was a baby. She was in there with Michael, her fiancé. They were talking about me, and what I heard in the next 10 minutes destroyed 33 years of my life. My name is Charles Davis, but everyone calls me Charlie. I'm 65 years old, a retired construction foreman, and for my whole life I believed that if you worked hard and loved your family, everything would work out. That night, I discovered I was completely wrong. I stood frozen behind that half-open door in my best jacket and freshly polished work boots, while my only daughter planned to erase me from her existence like I was trash she needed to throw out before starting her new life. They said I was an embarrassment, a problem to be solved, a rough old man they had to hide in some nursing home far from the city so I wouldn't ruin their reputation in front of Michael's wealthy family. They talked about taking my house, my savings, everything I had. Jennifer laughed when Michael asked if I would suspect anything. She said no, that I was too trusting, too naive to realize what was happening. She said I was just an embarrassing blue-collar worker who didn't belong in their world. In that moment, something inside me snapped. But I didn't storm in there screaming. I didn't confront them. I walked away in silence, left that restaurant without anyone seeing me. And as I walked through those streets with my heart pounding, I made a decision that would change everything. Let me tell you how I got here. How a father who gave everything for his daughter ended up listening while that same daughter planned to destroy him. I met Mary Davis in 1981, when I was 22 years old. I was working construction for a local crew. She was a secretary at the Ford permit office downtown. Every Tuesday I'd go in there to file paperwork for our job sites, and every Tuesday she'd smile at me from behind that counter. Took me 3 months to work up the courage to ask her for coffee. We got married 2 years later, in 1983, at St. Mary's Church. Small ceremony, maybe 40 people. I was making decent money framing houses. Mary kept working at the permit office. We rented a little apartment on the south side and started trying for kids right away. That's when the hard years began. Month after month, year after year, nothing happened. The doctors ran tests, gave us advice, told us to be patient. Mary cried herself to sleep some nights, worried something was wrong with her. I'd hold her and tell her everything would work out. But inside I was scared too. After 8 years of trying, we'd almost given up hope. Mary was 31, I was 32. The doctor said it might never happen for us. We started talking about adoption, looking into agencies. Then, in the spring of 1991, Mary came home from work with tears in her eyes. For a second, I thought someone had died. Instead, she handed me a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. After 8 years, we were finally going to have a baby. I worked every hour of overtime I could get during that pregnancy. Double shifts, weekend jobs, anything to save money. I wanted our child to have everything I never had growing up. My dad was a mechanic who drank too much and left us when I was 12. I swore I'd be different. Jennifer was born on October 15th, 1991. 6 pounds, 12 ounces. She had Mary's blue eyes and my stubborn chin. When the nurse put her in my arms for the first time, I made a promise. I'd work myself to death if it meant she'd never want for anything. Looking back now, maybe I kept that promise too well. The first few years were the best of my life. By then I'd started my own small construction company with 2 other guys from the crew. We specialized in residential framing, small commercial jobs. Nothing fancy, but honest work that paid the bills. Mary quit her job to stay home with Jennifer. We bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a working-class neighborhood with a decent school district. Had a small yard where Jennifer learned to walk, to run, to ride her bike. We weren't rich, but we had what mattered. We had a family. Jennifer was smart from day one. Started talking early, reading before kindergarten. Her teachers always said the same thing at parent conferences. This girl could go places with the right opportunities. That's all I needed to hear. Whatever it took, Jennifer was going to have those opportunities. When she was in middle school, Jennifer started talking about wanting to go to college. Not just any college. She wanted to study business, maybe become a lawyer or work for a big company downtown. She'd point to the skyscrapers when we drove through the city and say, "Someday I'm going to work in one of those buildings, Dad." I was proud as hell. My daughter was going to wear a suit to work instead of work boots. She was going to have an office instead of a construction site. She was going to be somebody important. But college cost money. Serious money, more than a construction foreman could save up easily. So in 2009, when Jennifer was 18 and starting her senior year of high school, I made a decision that would change both our lives. I sold my stake in the construction company for $45,000 and put every penny into a college fund for Jennifer. Jennifer got into State University with a partial academic scholarship, but even with that help, the costs were steep. Tuition, room and board, books, everything added up fast. That $45,000 from selling the business covered most of her first 3 years, but I had to pick up handyman jobs on weekends to make ends meet. I didn't mind the extra work. Seeing Jennifer in her college sweatshirt, hearing her talk about her business classes and internships, watching her confidence grow, that was worth every sore, muscle, and long day. She was becoming the woman I'd always dreamed she could be. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March 2012. Jennifer was finishing her junior year, just 21 years old. Mary had gone in for her annual checkup the week before, and Dr. Peterson wanted to see us both right away. The tone in his voice told me everything I needed to know before we even walked into his office. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3. The words hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. Dr. Peterson explained the treatment options: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. He was optimistic, he said, but it would be aggressive treatment, expensive treatment. Our insurance would cover most of it, but there would be gaps: copays, experimental drugs, travel to specialists. Mary took the news better than I did. She squeezed my hand and asked practical questions about the timeline, the side effects, what to expect. I sat there trying to process that my wife of 29 years might not see our daughter graduate college. We told Jennifer that weekend when she came home. She cried, we all cried, but then she got that determined look I knew so well. She wanted to take time off school to help with Mom's treatment. Mary wouldn't hear of it. "You finish your degree," she told Jennifer firmly. "That's what I want. That's what your father worked for." The next 18 months were a blur of hospital visits, treatments, and hope followed by setbacks. Mary fought hard. Some days were good. We'd go for walks around the neighborhood. She'd help Jennifer with her senior thesis over the phone. Other days she couldn't get out of bed. Jennifer came home more often during that time. She'd sit with Mary for hours, reading to her, watching old movies together. For a while, I thought this terrible thing might actually bring us closer as a family, that we'd come through it stronger. Mary passed away on September 3rd, 2012, just 6 weeks before Jennifer's college graduation. The cancer had spread faster than anyone expected. One day she was talking about coming to the graduation ceremony. The next she was gone. The life insurance policy paid $50,000. Mary had insisted we keep up the payments even when money was tight. For Jennifer's future, she'd always said. Now I understood what she meant. I used that money to cover Jennifer's final year of college and help her get started after graduation. New clothes for job interviews, a security deposit on her first apartment, a reliable used car. Jennifer graduated magna cum laude in May 2013 with a degree in business administration. Mary would have been so proud. Jennifer landed a good job right out of college at Morrison Marketing, a mid-sized firm downtown. Starting salary was $65,000, more money than Mary and I had ever made combined. I was amazed and proud. My daughter was officially making more in her first job than I'd made after 30 years in construction. After Mary died, I had to make some changes myself. The house felt too empty, too quiet. I couldn't, afford to keep it on just my Social Security, so I started taking on handyman jobs around the neighborhood. Nothing too heavy. I was 53, and my back wasn't what it used to be. But I could still fix a leaky faucet, hang drywall, build a deck. I thought Jennifer and I would stay close after losing Mary, that we'd be there for each other, share the grief, support each other through the adjustment. But Jennifer threw herself into her new career with an intensity that worried me. She worked late most nights, took on extra projects, networked at industry events. Her visits became less frequent. Once a month became every other month, then just holidays and birthdays. When she did come by, she seemed distracted, always checking her phone, talking about work deadlines and office politics. I told myself she was just establishing herself, building her career. Mary would have wanted that. The changes started subtle. Jennifer's clothes got more expensive, her car got nicer. She joined a gym, downtown, started going to wine tastings and charity events. She'd tell me stories about her coworkers and their lifestyles, people who vacationed in Europe, who owned boats, who sent their kids to private schools. I was happy she was doing well, but sometimes I felt like I was talking to a stranger. The girl who used to sit on my lap while I read her bedtime stories was becoming someone I didn't quite recognize. Then in 2022, Jennifer met Michael Thompson at a networking event for young professionals. She called me that night, more excited than I'd heard her since college. He was handsome, successful, came from a good family. His parents owned several commercial properties around the city. They were well-connected, she said, whatever that meant. Jennifer brought Michael to the house for the first time in November 2022. I'll never forget that visit. He was polite enough, shook my hand firmly, complimented Mary's flower garden that I still maintained. But I caught the way his eyes moved around the room, taking in the worn furniture, the outdated TV, the family photos on the mantel showing me in work clothes. He asked about the neighborhood, about property values, about my retirement plans. His questions felt like he was sizing something up, though I couldn't put my finger on what. After that visit, Jennifer started making suggestions about my lifestyle. Maybe I should think about updating the house. Maybe I should consider moving somewhere more manageable for a man my age. Maybe I should invest in some nicer clothes for when I met Michael's family. I didn't understand what was happening then. I thought she was just trying to help me fit in with her new world, her successful boyfriend and his wealthy family. I thought she was looking out for her old man. I had no idea she was ashamed of me. Michael proposed to Jennifer in March 2024. She called me at 7 a.m., crying with happiness, talking so fast I could barely understand her. He'd taken her to some fancy restaurant downtown, got down on one knee in front of everyone. The ring cost more than I made in 6 months doing handyman work. They set the wedding date for October, a big celebration at the Riverside Country Club with 150 guests. Jennifer was in full planning mode within days, talking about flowers and caterers and photographers. Michael's family was handling most of the expenses, she explained, since they had more resources and connections in the event industry. I offered to help pay for something, anything, but Jennifer waved me off. "Don't worry about it, Dad. The Thompsons have it covered. You just need to show up and walk me down the aisle." She said it with a smile, but something in her tone made me feel small, like I was being managed rather than included. The wedding preparations consumed Jennifer's life over the spring and summer. Every conversation was about venue details, menu tastings, guest lists. She'd show me photos on her phone of dresses that cost more than my monthly Social Security check, flowers arrangements worth more than my truck. I tried to stay involved, asking questions, offering opinions. But Jennifer would get this patient look, like she was humoring a child who didn't understand grown-up things. "Dad, it's really complicated. There are a lot of moving pieces. The Thompsons have experience with these kinds of events." These kinds of events. Like I'd never been to a wedding before. Like I hadn't married her mother in a ceremony that might have been simple, but was filled with more love than all their expensive flowers and fancy catering. The first real warning sign came in late August. Jennifer showed up at my house on a Wednesday evening with a manila folder full of papers. Legal documents, she said, related to the wedding and her change in marital status, insurance forms, beneficiary updates, family information for the marriage license. It's just paperwork, Dad. Boring stuff. My lawyer needs these signed by tomorrow morning. She was rushing around my kitchen while she talked, clearly in a hurry to get somewhere else. The documents were dense with legal language I couldn't follow. Powers of attorney, asset transfers, beneficiary designations. Jennifer kept checking her phone, tapping her foot. Dad, I really need to get these back to the office. Can you just sign where I've marked? Something in my gut told me to slow down. These papers felt too important to rush through, even if I didn't understand all the language. Let me read these overnight, I said. I'll have them signed for you tomorrow. Jennifer's face flashed with irritation. Dad, it's just standard legal stuff. Everyone has to update these things when they get married. My lawyer is waiting. But I held firm. I want to have my friend Richard take a look. He'll know if there's anything I need to worry about. Richard Miller had been in my construction crew back in the day, before he went to law school in his 30s and became a family attorney. We still grabbed coffee once a month, talked about the old days, complained about our aching joints and the way the world was changing. Jennifer left that night angry, the papers unsigned in her hands. She didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Richard called me the next day after looking at the documents. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Charlie, these aren't insurance forms. This is a comprehensive power of attorney that would give Jennifer complete control over your house, your savings, every asset you have. You sign these, and legally she can do whatever she wants with your money. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. That can't be right. She said it was just standard wedding paperwork. There's nothing standard about this. These documents would essentially sign away your financial independence. She could sell your house, empty your accounts, put you in a nursing home, and you'd have no legal recourse to stop her. I confronted Jennifer the next time she called. Tried to keep my voice calm, reasonable. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding. Maybe her lawyer had mixed up some paperwork. Jennifer came over that evening with explanations ready. She and Michael were starting a consulting business after the honeymoon, she said. They needed collateral for the business loan, and the bank had suggested using my house as security. It's just a formality, Dad. You'd still live here, obviously, but legally the property would need to be in our name for the loan application. It sounded reasonable the way she explained it. Jennifer had always been smarter than me about business and finance, but Richard's words kept echoing in my head. Complete control over your house, your savings, every asset you have. What about my savings? I asked. Why do they need access to my bank accounts for your business loan? Jennifer hesitated for just a second, but I caught it. It's all connected, Dad. The bank looks at the whole financial picture, but don't worry about the details. Michael's family has done this kind of thing before. They know how it works. I told her I needed more time to think about it, to understand what I was signing. Jennifer got upset then, really upset. She accused me of not trusting her, of sabotaging her future, of being a paranoid old man who didn't understand how the modern business world worked. She left that night in tears, saying she didn't know how to explain to Michael and his family that her own father wouldn't help her when she needed it most. 2 weeks of silence followed. 2 weeks where I stared at those unsigned papers and wondered if I was being foolish. Maybe I was just a paranoid old man. Maybe I should trust my daughter, the college graduate, the successful businesswoman who understood things I didn't. Then came the invitation to the engagement dinner. Elegant cardstock, embossed lettering, the works. An intimate celebration with close family and the wedding party. Giuseppe's restaurant. Tuesday evening, October 8th, 7 p.m. Jennifer called to confirm I was coming. Her voice was cordial but distant, like she was talking to a distant relative rather than her father. We didn't mention the unsigned papers, but they hung between us like a wall. I marked the date on my kitchen calendar, Tuesday, 7 p.m., but my handwriting was getting shaky in my old age, and the 7 looked like a 6. A stupid mistake that would change both our lives forever. Tuesday, October 8th, arrived gray and cold. I spent extra time getting ready, put on my best suit, the navy one I'd worn to Mary's funeral, polished my good shoes until they gleamed, trimmed my mustache, and combed what was left of my hair. I wanted to look respectable for Jennifer, for Michael's family, maybe show them that a working man could clean up just fine. I drove to Giuseppe's carefully, taking my time on the slick roads. Always been punctual, habit from 30 years of construction sites where being late meant lost money. When I checked my watch in the parking lot, it read 6:15 p.m. Perfect timing to be 15 minutes early. But when I walked into the restaurant and saw it nearly empty, I realized my mistake. The hostess looked confused when I mentioned the Davis party. She checked her book twice before telling me the reservation was for 7 p.m., not 6. My handwriting had betrayed me again. The 7 on my kitchen calendar had looked like a 6, and now I was an hour early to my daughter's engagement dinner. I almost left, thought about driving around the block until 7 o'clock. But it was cold outside, my feet already hurt from the dress shoes, and I could see the private dining room Jennifer had reserved was set up and ready. I decided to wait inside, maybe order a coffee and sit quietly until the other guests arrived. That's when I heard voices coming from the back room. Jennifer's laugh, unmistakable even through the walls. She must have come early to check on the setup. I walked toward the sound, planning to surprise her, to tell her how proud I was that she'd put together such an elegant evening. The door to the private room was slightly open. I could see Jennifer inside with Michael, both of them dressed up, going over what looked like seating charts. I was about to knock when I heard Michael ask about the arrangements, about where I'd be sitting during dinner. And then Jennifer sighed, a tired, annoyed sound I'd never heard from her before. "Dad's going to be a problem we need to solve soon," she said. "I can't let him keep ruining things with your family." I froze. My hand stopped halfway to the door. Michael laughed. "He was pretty rough around the edges at our last family dinner. My mother made some comments afterward." I know. He doesn't understand that your parents' friends judge everything. The clothes, the conversation, the background. He shows up with his work boots and starts talking about construction projects. It's embarrassing." Each word was like a slap across the face. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but listen. "After the wedding, we'll need to find him somewhere more appropriate," Michael said. "Maybe one of those senior living places outside the city. Somewhere he can't accidentally show up and embarrass us in front of important people." Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. "I've been researching facilities. There are some nice ones about 2 hours away. Far enough that he couldn't just drive over for visits, but close enough that we could say we're involved in his care." They started discussing my finances like I was already dead. The house I'd lived in for 28 years, where I'd raised Jennifer, where Mary had died. They talked about selling it and using the proceeds for Michael's business startup. My savings account, the small nest egg I'd built up doing handyman work for 12 years since Mary's death. They had plans for that too. "Will he suspect anything?" Michael asked. Jennifer's laugh cut through me like a blade. "Dad? No. He's always been naive, trusting to a fault. He still thinks I'm his little girl who needs protecting. He has no idea I've been managing him for years." Managing him? All those suggestions about updating his lifestyle, moving somewhere more convenient, letting me help with his finances. I've been setting this up for months. He'll think it's his idea by the time I'm done. I stood there behind that door, listening to my only child plan to steal everything I had, warehouse me like damaged goods, erase me from her life like I'd never mattered. The girl I'd worked myself to exhaustion for, whose college education I'd bought by selling the business I'd built with my own hands, whose mother's life insurance money I'd spent launching her career. But I didn't storm in screaming. I didn't confront them. Something cold and calculating settled over me instead. The kind of anger that plans, that waits, that strikes when it will do the most damage. Backed away from that door silent as a ghost. left the restaurant the same way I'd entered, unnoticed and invisible. Drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night I called Richard Miller, told him everything I'd heard. Richard had seen cases like this before, adult children manipulating elderly parents, stealing their assets through legal tricks and emotional blackmail. The word he used was exploitation. We had exactly 10 days before the wedding to build my defense. Over the next week, Richard helped me set up an irrevocable trust for my house. We changed my will, leaving everything to a charity that helped elderly construction workers. We moved my savings to a new account Jennifer didn't know about. Every legal protection we could think of. But Richard suggested something else. People like Jennifer and Michael need to face consequences publicly, he said. Humiliation in front of the people they're trying to impress. That's the only thing that will really hurt them. The idea terrified me. It meant burning bridges forever, destroying any hope of reconciliation. But those bridges were already burned. Jennifer just didn't know it yet. The wedding was everything she'd dreamed of. The country club decorated with thousands of dollars worth of flowers. An orchestra, 7-course dinner, 150 guests in evening wear. I sat at a table near the back with distant cousins who barely acknowledged me. After dinner came the speeches. I hadn't been on the list, but I'd spoken to the coordinator earlier, told him I had something special to share about my daughter. When they announced that the father of the bride wanted to say a few words, Jennifer looked shocked. We hadn't discussed this, but it was too late to stop me now. I walked to that microphone on steady legs, looked out at all those wealthy, important faces. And I told them the truth. I told them about a father who'd sold his business to pay for his daughter's education, who'd used his wife's life insurance money to launch her career, who'd worked handyman jobs into his 60s because he believed family was worth any sacrifice. And I told them what that daughter really thought of him. I played the recording I'd made the night before, when Jennifer came to my house thinking I'd finally decided to sign those papers. Her voice filled that elegant ballroom, talking about her embarrassing blue-collar father, planning to hide me away, admitting she'd been managing me for years like a problem to be solved. The silence when it finished was absolute. Jennifer was sobbing, her makeup ruined. Michael had stepped away from her like she was contagious. His parents were already heading for the exit. I told them all that I'd put my house in an irrevocable trust that morning, that Jennifer would inherit nothing, that every penny I had would go to help other elderly people protect themselves from family exploitation. Then I put down the microphone and walked out of that country club with my head high. For the first time in years, I was the one in control. 6 months later, I'm living in a small town 2 hours away. Bought a little house with cash, started a handyman business, made friends with other retirees who don't judge a man by his work boots or his bank account. Jennifer's marriage lasted exactly 3 hours. The story went viral on social media. She lost her job, her reputation, her wealthy boyfriend, and his family's approval. Sometimes people ask if I have any regrets. I tell them the truth. I regret waiting so long to stand up for myself. I regret letting my daughter think love meant being a doormat. But I don't regret that engagement dinner. That mistake with the time was the best thing that ever happened to me. It showed me who my daughter really was, and more importantly, it showed me who I could still become. At 66, I finally learned that respect matters more than being loved. And that's a lesson worth everything it cost me. Real love demands respect. Anything less is just manipulation wearing a family mask. You teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept. And I finally learned to demand better.